Well, thank you. We're here today with Jessica Pham for our Regen podcast for the UC San Diego Sanford Stem Cell Institute. Thanks for being with us today, Jessica.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. I'm really happy you could take some time out of our busy symposium schedule here this fall of 2024 to be able to have a little bit of a conversation with you.
Yes, happy to be here.
So tell us what you do. Tell our listeners what you do for the Sanford Stem Cell Institute.
Well, that kind of varies. I feel like I wear a lot of different hats, but especially yes, don't we all? Welcome to 2024.
Yeah.
For the Sanford Stem Cell Institute, I am the mission specialist. I have done 7 successful launches to the International Space Station, and we're working on 2 more. I think that will be launching next year.
Wow.
So that's kind of
How long have you been here?
So I am also part of Dr. Jamieson's lab, Dr. Catriona Jamieson, at UC San Diego. So I am her lab manager as well. So that's my other hat that I guess I was talking about.
Sure.
I manage the lab, make sure everything's, in place, whatever anybody needs. So I've been with Dr. Jamieson for, I believe, 8 years, and then with the Sanford Stem Cell Institute being established, I believe 2 years ago now, 2022. Yeah. Wow, it's been a little bit of a while. So I guess 2 years since it started.
That's fair. But you've been with UC San Diego and Dr. Jamieson with Kat for quite a while.
Yes, and I'm actually a UC San Diego alumni. So
you?
I've actually officially been in San Diego for 12 years. So, and I hit my 10-year research milestone this year.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Go Tritons.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Mermen unite.
Yes.
Right? That's what it's all about. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're the only university with a merman as our mascot.
A non-bear, although we do have unofficial bears throughout.
Oh, right.
Interspersed, but
leave it to San Diego.
Yes.
But that's a conversation for another podcast.
Yes.
Not this one,
yes.
But that's all right. So seven launches into space. Tell me about that. What's it like to be our mission specialist? What a cool title.
Yes, very cool title. Definitely never thought that, it'd be something like to my, I guess, add-on namesake.
Right?
I don't know. What is it about launches? I don't know. Sometimes I actually still don't believe that I've actually done that many. It's just like I don't even know how to describe it. It's you're working towards a goal, and it's kind of like the most concrete goal you have, unless of course there is a launch slip, which does happen due to weather, etc. So 7 launches, but I've actually only witnessed 6 because there was actually one that was delayed, but because we work with partners that have automation, so we kind of just plugged in our science and did a quick media exchange, and then we kind of flew back home. I think it was for Thanksgiving, and then watched remotely as our stem cells were launched into space.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's hard to describe. Like I said, I still don't believe that I've done it. It's a lot of sleepless nights, but at the end of it, the reward, I guess, is so, and then the impact that we potentially have on healthcare and finding out.
Absolutely.
Cancer kill switch is what they're calling it nowadays. So that is definitely very exciting.
Absolutely. So there's a lot to unpack there. So you do all of this work in advance, right? Yes. And you're preparing for a launch, and it's scheduled for XYZ date, but that date may not come because of weather, technical problems, all those types of things. Yeah.
Yes. Or astronauts getting stuck in space, but
Right, yeah.
Every little bit of everything.
Right. There's so many variables. They're way out of your control because you're not going up into space. So you're not controlling that, are you?
Right.
Do you want to go up into space?
There have been a lot of talks that I will be going into space.
Really?
But it's talks right now. So I'm just going to play that off and yeah.
Well, whoever's listening, let's get Jessica Pham into space. Whoever's listening out there, make that happen.
Okay.
Do you want that to happen?
I am unsure about it right now. I think, like I said, with all the missions, I still am unsure that it's actually happened. Sometimes I think all of this is a dream, not in a philosophical existential crisis way, but it's so there's so much that goes into it, blood, sweat, and tears, literally.
Yes.
So sometimes it doesn't feel real, but I know it is real. So with the going into space, I'm just gonna keep it at that and be when we get there is when we get there.
That's fair. When it happens, put that out into the universe, they say, and what may,
Yes,
you
exactly.
may be in space. That'd be
Yes.
great. Yeah, especially as space gets more privatized, we have the ability to send up folks like you into lower Earth orbit
Right.
to be able to conduct these experiments.
Right. Right.
That would be fascinating beyond just working, at the bench, as we call it,
Right.
And so it'd be, for you, it'd be bench to orbit to back to
Right.
bedside.
Right.
So talk about that, because right now the work that you're doing translates into work that we do with our patients and folks that participate in clinical trials at our Sanford Stem Cell Clinical Center,
Right.
right? And
Right.
at the Alpha Clinic that we have here in San Diego,
Yes.
but also, nationwide or worldwide. So talk to me about how the work that you're doing at the bench, as we call it, right, in the lab, then translates into that.
Right.
And makes a difference in somebody's life, because you already mentioned that.
Right. Well, I think like it's just obviously like there's a lot of healthcare problems. There's, diseases that we don't quite have cures for, or maybe it's just not even a cure, but maybe this idea of that can we extend, someone's, life for however long, just to give them that little bit of extra time, to do what they need to do. So I think what we're doing in the lab, like we're really focused on like human-based research, like the different diseases that everybody has, like cancer as like a leading cause of death. I think what we're doing is just, I don't know, sometimes it's actually easy, I think, to lose track of like what the goal is, just because you're like, oh, I have this deadline, like, oh, let's get this, But at the end of the day, I feel like sometimes just having that like step back and then being like, okay, what we're doing like is like we're testing different things, we're testing different compounds, we're even trying to establish models. So the word like avatar is being thrown around a lot. So it's like this idea of like almost like personalized medicine, where we're creating these little avatars from people, and it can be normal. It doesn't have to be like a disease model, but let's say if we, study like, if we do develop a disease model, like how, like what can we do? What can we target? Like by developing these mini avatars. So that's kind of like a unique aspect of kind of bringing almost the bedside back to the bench. So
That's fantastic. That's think back to childhood. You're in school. Did you ever think that this is where your career would go?
Oh, definitely not.
No. So what were you thinking back then?
To be honest, I don't really even know. Like I knew that I was quote unquote good in like math, science, biology. And I mean, I grew up in Southern California, and I was always either going to go to I was hoping to go to one of the Southern California schools, got into UC San Diego, and I was just like, that's it, that's pipe dream, like got to that milestone.
Yeah.
Went to class here and then found a research lab, and then ever since then, so like I said, I've been in research now 10 years.
Okay.
And I feel like the idea of like solving problems that aren't necessarily solvable, or even not even that, just trying to figure out things, put pieces together, put puzzles, test different things, that's kind of always been like attractive to me. But whether or not if like research was like my end goal, I don't know. I don't want to say I fell into it, but I got the experience, and then I just kept going.
Sure.
It's still interesting to me, like always has been, and hopefully will continue to be really interesting.
That's great. That's great.
So,
That's great that your career took a pivot that you never even envisioned or thought would happen.
yes.
So you said 10 years ago about that happened and you found yourself in a lab. How did you find yourself to Dr. Catriona Jamieson's lab? Dr. Cat Jamieson is our director
Right.
at the Sanford Stem Cell Institute and also has her own Jamieson lab. How did you find your way there?
Honestly, it was out of necessity, but I feel like necessity breeds like ingenuity, and you have to like figure out different like problem solving, right? So truthfully, it was a situation where like my former PI that I like got trained in, he was moving because he was promoted to a new position, new university. And it just didn't make sense like for my current life, like to move with the lab.
Sure.
So I actually, out of necessity, had to actually go on the job market, search around, and then I found Dr. Jamieson's lab, and I've been here since, so 8 years.
Okay. That's wonderful. And you're the lab manager.
Yes.
And for those of you who don't know, a PI is a principal investigator.
Yes.
And those folks receive grants and those types of things. And so that's where we use the terminology PI. Kat will be the first person to say we use too many acronyms. It's what we do, right?
Yes.
And she's from Canada, so then she makes sports hockey
Yes.
acronyms.
Yes. I-score, yes.
It's great,
Indeed,
yeah. What is I-score, by the way? You just mentioned it.
I-score is the Integrated Space Stem Cell Orbital Research Center now. So I'm adding, I guess, I-score C. So it's a center within the Sanford Stem Cell Institute.
Yes.
It's one of 6, but then we also have a brain tumor program. So it is kind of the start of 2 directors, Dr. Allison Moultrie and Dr. Catriona Jamieson. They were kind of really crucial in getting like the first missions out of the Institute, Sanford Consortium. So Allison's first launch was in 2019, and then Dr. Jamieson's was in 2021. So it's kind of the center that we create all the science that we're sending to the International Space Station.
Absolutely. A center that is focused on space-related research and science within a stem cell research institute and a leading university. We can say that since we're all part of UC San Diego.
Yes.
And it's amazing to work with both Allison Moultrie and Kat Jamieson on the things that you're doing. So the work you do in the Jamieson lab and also as the mission specialist for our institute translates into that I-score center, translates into work on the space station for research, but also then translates into applicable pieces and aspects for patient engagement.
Yes.
Right? And treating therapies that treat ailments, cancer, or whatever it might be, right?
Right.
That's amazing. You're making such a difference. Thank you for
Sounds
the work
very
you're
nice
doing.
the way you're like packaging it together.
Well, that's what I do.
Okay, fair.
No, but it's really wonderful.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who's young, just going to college, thinking about going to college, that hadn't even thought that this might be a career path for them? How would you encourage the younger generation that's coming up that you will be training and that you're already training?
Right.
But how do we encourage folks to join this industry?
Right. I don't know if so for anybody who's starting out in their career, or even if you're not even thinking about it, I am a strong believer in it doesn't really matter where you start. But it's also not about where you end up. It's kind of the journey to get there. If you don't think that science is for you, give it a shot. That's the only way you'll know, right? So I don't know. I'm a big proponent of internships. My research career actually started out I was a volunteer for 2 years before I was actually hired. I think that is kind of the crucial period to find out even if you like science. You could think that you like science, but if you don't give it a try, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into, that career for eternity.
Yeah.
But there's also this idea that you can pivot. So it's we've had people within, our institute who have done science. They've gotten their PhDs, but I think the traditional route of education isn't quite what it used to be, where people were like, oh, if I get a PhD, then I have to, become a principal investigator, or I have to do academia. But there's industry and there's space industry. So I think there are several members, that we collaborate with who went from academia to space industry. So now they're kind of instrumental in, helping us manage projects on the International Space Station. So while we have, project managers for things that we do on Earth, we have project managers for things we do in low Earth orbit. So I think in the sense of how to get people, I think it's just experience. I don't know. I came across this idea of I guess people would call it cold emailing. If you don't shoot your shot, you're never going to know. So
that's true.
That's kind of the biggest.
That's
and then
true.
If we always thought that, it was impossible, then we wouldn't be where we are today. So that's kind of give it a shot and hopefully you score.
Absolutely. You brought up two things that reminded me. I think the first is internships are so important.
So important.
Experiential learning and being able to try out things, and maybe this isn't for you and maybe it is. And so that's a great way to encourage folks to do that. And maybe they pivot a different direction, say that internship was not for me,
Right.
but at least they have that experience and they get some credit for it, and, you know, whatever, or it might be a paid internship. The second is that you mentioned that we work with a lot of partners,
Yes.
and a lot of corporate partners. So the International Space Station, the way that I explain things to folks is that we are a neutral UC San Diego. You know, we're not a corporation, right? And so we're a neutral body to do research with.
Yes.
And working with the International Space Station is a bit neutral as well, even though it's a federally funded organization. It's still, you know, fairly neutral. But, you know, 2030 or so, the International Space Station is retiring, or however, whatever word you use.
Right, right.
So what do you see on the horizon as challenges, but also opportunities for working as space becomes privatized?
Right, right. I mean, I think it kind of opens, I don't want to say more doors, because I feel like the International Space Station, for what it represents and what it has accomplished, like, is monumental. Like, yes, it will be decommissioned in 2030, so that, like, you know, I think that would be sad. You know, anybody who's grown up in this era, like, has known so far that there is a space station 250 miles above us. But in the sense of, like, the opportunities that it kind of opens, it's kind of like almost, during one of the symposium sessions, the panel session, they were talking about, like, what's the pathway? Like, how do we carve out what the future will look like? But it's kind of like the International Space Station serves as that. It's where a place that, you know, research is conducted on board. People from different countries, people who might not even speak the same languages, can kind of come together and work in a really confined space.
Right.
So I don't know. Obviously, space is a very big space. So low Earth orbit, there will be, like, a lot of, I guess, playroom, big sandbox. So there's a lot of actual private companies right now, you know, trying to establish, or I guess reestablish, a space station, with the idea that, you know, the current International Space Station will, you know, be retired. So I think it kind of opens a lot of doors for what has been accomplished. So this is the decade of results, is what a lot of people are calling it. So we're designing, I guess, space stations based on what we have found, and, like, what equipment could be useful, like, what's the new technology out there? Because it would be rather unfortunate if we flew old technology on this brand new space station, like, futuristic aspect. So it's kind of this idea of where there's scientists talking, and there's, like, private industry talking, multiple groups talking to figure out what is the best moving forward.
So you're pretty confident that there's going to be a lot of opportunities, and we're going to have the right technology from the get-go, as opposed to shoulda, coulda, woulda, right?
Right.
That's
I mean,
great.
it's the only way to go forward.
Well, one would think,
Yeah, it's true.
But I mean, you're working with these folks every day, so you know, and they're taking your insight as lab manager, but also mission specialist, into consideration for what needs to happen up there.
Yeah, yes.
That's
but
great.
Also the crosstalk, like I said, so there's individuals that we work with who have gone from the academia side, have done research, their own missions successfully, like, on the ISS, and they've transitioned into, like, on the other side. So it's almost like it helps with the crosstalk of, like, okay, former academia to current academia, where do we move forward? How do we, like, what should we put on the ISS? So
it's great to have those folks, you know, working for the private corporations. Not only do they get it, but they're also friendly faces that can help advocate for us. I mean, it's an advantageous place to be. UC San Diego, Sanford Stem Cell Institute, you know, again, a neutral place where people can do research, but to be a place where space partners may come to us and say, we want you to do your research on our station. Right. And we're somewhat in that place now.
I think so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I think Southern obviously, yes, UC San Diego region, but I think Southern California, like, has quite a hold on like the space industry right now. I mean, we have a company in Long Beach, we have a company in LA, Hawthorne, and then I think there's, like, a new startup company that just was established, like, this year, and that company is working on, like, communications between, like, how to not have, like, disruption of communications between space and Earth. So, and then obviously we have our astrobiotechnology hub here. So it's kind of like, it's the place to be.
Yeah, it's also part of our institute.
Yes.
Yeah, we're quite the little space hub.
Yes, indeed.
Are you able to share an example of a specific piece of research that went from the bench up to space and back, where you got some results that were either surprising, unexpected, or moved that needle even more forward than you ever thought it might happen. Can you share some specifics? And it's okay to get sciencey and techie.
Okay. Yeah. So I said we've done 7 launches under Dr. Jamieson. 4 of the launches were really to focus on like normal hematopoietic stem cells. So stem cells are supposed to last our lifetime. They're supposed to, regenerate when we need it, when we need them. So they're really supposed to be very protective. So we were really curious, like, okay, so in this environment, this like stressful environment where we've already seen changes from different studies that have been being done, like on the ISS. So like, for example, the twin study. We had this idea that like, okay, what about the stem cells? Because they're supposed to be very protective. They're supposed to last our lifetime. Are they being affected by the same, radiation or just like the stress of traveling to space?
Yep. And when you refer to the twin study, not to interrupt, but you're talking about the Kelly brothers.
Yes. Published by Science in 2018, I believe.
Okay. So one twin went up to space for quite a while, one stayed.
Yes.
Just to clarify for our listeners.
Okay. Yes.
Didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So definitely talking about that study. But there have been numerous other studies that have looked at kind of like immune dysregulation. There are like fluid shifts. So there's like neurological changes that are happening to astronauts. And then there's also studies that are like, there are mouse studies, there are in vitro studies, avatar studies, so to speak. So we really wanted to focus on stem cells with their regenerative capacity, like even this idea that, okay, what does happen in space? And a lot of people have reported that there's this kind of like accelerant environment. So there are some groups who are even thinking like, okay, well, we can manufacture stem cells in space and potentially even bring them back as potential candidates of therapy. So for us, that was one of the studies that we did, and finding kind of like these markers of aging. So it would kind of, be a really beneficial to study aging in this compressed time frame. Whereas, like if we were on Earth and we're only constrained to Earth, then it would take years and years to kind of develop a model to study aging. Whereas if we're flying stuff to the ISS, then potentially we're getting results faster.
Yeah. So low Earth orbit is actually an accelerator of results for us.
I think so.
Yeah.
It also, like in that sense, what you're saying, the accelerator of results is not even just about, yes, obviously the science, but I think it's also this idea of like, how do we almost do science better? Because of the different constraints and like, you have to package your science into a way that is quick. It's safe. So we're even thinking of ways to kind of like create better ways to do science. So like, for example, with Dr. Jamieson, we've created the nanobioreactors. So those are like our quote unquote avatars, where we're putting primary patient samples into those. And then we're really identifying, what changes are happening to those specific stem cells. So it's kind of this idea of like, it's not just about like return of results, but it's also like innovation, like technology. How do we automate things? Not differently, but it's almost as if doing space-based research has allowed research on Earth to be easier and better.
Yeah,
so,
a little more efficient, a little quicker.
Yeah. Technologically quicker, faster, developing new things, new strategies.
So there have been times where you've sent what we call a payload up to space.
Yes.
And it comes back, what, 2 a.m. on a Sunday, on a Saturday?
Sometimes.
What's that like? What's that experience waiting for that to come down and splash down?
Right. So in part of the research, or in part of doing all of, I guess, as mission specialists, it's also returning back to Florida. So we, I think, are quite unique and poised in the sense that we do live return. So what live return means is we send a biological payload that is alive. So live stem cells, we do real-time imaging in flight, and then we actually return the cells live so that we can do functional downstream studies. So if we kind of, I guess, quote unquote, terminate the experiment in space. So whatever at that moment that you see, so for example, fixing the cells, it's whatever changes happen to the cells in that moment at that exact time. But for us, we're flying the cells back. Just like how astronauts, we're not fixing astronauts in space and then bringing them back to study. So there's this idea of what does pre-flight mean for astronauts? Are they anticipating stress? Are they undergoing, different changes leading up to launch, and then what is happening in flight, and then what is happening upon return. So we are very fortunate that we've worked with great collaborators who have allowed us to bring back cells live so that we're actually able to follow up on functional studies. So for example, with the stem cells, we want to make sure, like, okay, while we're seeing changes in flight, like, what does that actually mean? Are they coming back, you know, as stem cells? So we have like the lab members in the lab, for example, Larissa, she's a project scientist in the lab. She does a lot of our colony survival self-renewal assays. So she'll basically tell us, like, okay, the stem cells are indeed still stem cells, or they're not, which, you know, that is, I don't want to say it's negative results, but it's also important results. So I think, I guess in speaking of results, like, a lot of the field is kind of saying, like, we also have to publish negative results. So while, you know, it's cool that you could potentially find a discovery and this is amazing, but also this idea of, like, paving the roadmap for, like, what didn't work as well. So that's equally as important.
Yeah, and that's not even negative results.
No,
it's just
is
like
results.
It's when I was, you know, when I was in school, there is no bad data. Data is data. It just informs how we then make the next steps in the next process, right? To better improve.
Yeah, so
Great.
I don't know, it's all encompassing.
That's amazing. You're doing amazing work in the Jamieson Lab and here in the Sanford Stem Cell Institute at UC San Diego.
Thank you.
I appreciate you joining us today for the Regen podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you, and you as well.